Losing to UCLA, I don't even think was the worst thing that Franklin had to deal with. It was the conversations after he landed back in State College.
You are Locked On College Crossover, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
That is right. It is a Locked On crossover to talk everything that is surrounding this Penn State football program right now. The uncertainty with James Franklin's tenure. My name is Zach Seyko, and I'm the host of Locked On Nittany Lions. He is Brian Smith, host of The Portal and Locked On Seminoles, recruiting expert with the network, but just generally a college football expert. And we're going to talk about the recruiting implications of all of this, whether James Franklin stays or goes, Franklin's buyout, and why Penn State, this is a tough call for the university. He might not even be fired at the end of the day, but the fallout after losing to UCLA, the tough conversations that Franklin had to have with the higher-ups, with Pat Kraft, but also the team. Today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Friendly reminder to let us know your thoughts down in the comments section. Brian, you and I wanted to start with this because losing to Oregon and then losing to UCLA, the worst part about all of this might be that Franklin might lose the team.
Look, there's this expectation that this was the year. You lose Oregon, overtime game, it is what it is, but everything's still in front of you. Losing to UCLA, now you're on that cusp. You may not even make the playoff. Like, that is hard to fathom, going from a team that was almost ranked number one to, wait a minute, we're close. We lose one more game. We're 9-3. We're on the cusp of not being. That could cause some problems. So it's usually one of two directions. Everybody just dials in and you're good. Or even if it's just a handful of guys, if they're out, like if they're not giving everything in prep during the week and all that, that can sour a roster real quick. It only takes 4 or 5 guys and it can go south. How does that work? And here's the other part, and I'm not picking on them. Northwestern is next. Zach, are you excited to cover Northwestern? I mean, honestly, are you really excited to cover Northwestern?
The game that I'm looking forward to, if Penn State beats Northwestern and Iowa, is the Ohio State game.
Right. You know,
that's the end of that. Supposedly, we would think that's the end of the season on the line there. That's the complete end.
But if you're not ready for just talking about players, and coaches know this, if you're not getting better against Northwestern and Iowa, what are your chances to even come close to beating Ohio State?
Oh, no. But for the entertainment and the what if factor, Ohio State is still presumably on the table.
Yeah. Oh, 100%. And Ohio State better not take Penn State lightly either. That's why college football is the greatest sport on earth. Mm-hmm. There's so many emotional roller coasters. Trying to be even keel as a fan is nearly impossible, but it is interesting. And here's the thing. This week will be the hardest week for Franklin and his staff to coach. Even if they were undefeated, trying to get Penn State players ready to play Northwestern is like banging your head on a wall. That is what I call a helmet game for all the wrong reasons. Not because you're excited about the other team's helmet, it's because you don't respect it that much. I don't care if they threaten to cut their hands off. It's going to be hard. Losing to UCLA, and they were as flat as a 20-year-old Coke. They just cannot get going. They finally do, and they're down 17, 20 points or whatever it was. Mm-hmm. That's got to be hard on you. So, again, does that motivate you? Because they looked motivated in the second half, like they played with their pants on fire, and they should have. But now does that carry over when you didn't quite complete the comeback? I don't know. This was the most weird upset since 1985 in college football. I mean, it's weird. I don't know if there's any lecture that even Paterno could have gave in his prime that would pull that team out of that funk. So from that, it's interesting. And then here's the other part. There's buy-in and all that. And I'm sure that, behind closed doors, you'll never hear this publicly. The AD, other people in the athletic department, is their job. What's the pulse of the roster? Are we going to lose anybody, et cetera? In the portal era, that's possible. I don't think that's the case because I think Penn State's culture has been really, really good. Mm-hmm. But they weren't ready for UCLA, so you have to at least have it on your radar. That's just part of it. And it's, again, this is the part of the dynamic of college football that makes it more unique than anything else. It's not like the NFL. Well, I'm mad at the head coach, but I'm under contract. Doesn't work that way in college. So the contract NIL, they can get around and the kid weeps. So many little snippets right there, man. It's really fascinating.
So we'll get to your perspective on what those conversations behind closed doors look like with Pat Kraft and anybody that's, really high up that, has some influence or a lot of influence on the program. Let me respond to a couple of things that you said, because a bunch, obviously everything stood out, but the things that one, Franklin looks defeated. Brian, I don't know if you watched a lot or any of the press conference or snippets of it, but he just looks defeated. From the way that the discourse has been online, and I know that I don't think that James Franklin lives online, but somehow he does. He is always aware of what the media is saying and what the feedback is and what the comments are. So whether that is brought to his attention by the people that help him in the communications department, or it's James Franklin saying, let me scroll through everything. What's my news feed look like? He seems defeated. So something was said or a conversation was had that he didn't like. He says the team is still bought in, but the way that he is acting and the way that he is having his most recent press conference leads me to believe otherwise. As far as the team dynamic goes, I would like to think that most people are at least are going to stay bought in, but it is the energy factor. What is the energy level? Because this is a senior-laden team. So you say, is there going to be a roster fallout this offseason with the transfer portal and everything like that? The team's already going to turn over as it is. Drew Aller's going to the NFL, both running backs, a majority of the offensive line, a majority of the defensive line, a majority of the secondary. All those guys are going to the NFL. So there's going to be roster turnover as it is. And you said how this is different between NFL contracts and NIL payments. NIL payments are paid up front. Like, they already got their due. So there is no financial incentive because I already got paid. And I'm not saying Penn State is like, yep, we're checked out because we already got our paychecks, but it's just kind of the subconscious thing where there's no financial incentive because you got your payment as far as we're all concerned here. Now let's pivot to Pat Kraft and James Franklin and what those conversations, it was definitely a quiet plane ride, but after everyone landed in State College, how do you think that conversation went down between Franklin and Kraft?
They may have had it at different points on the ride or anything else, who knows, but afterwards, they got to reassess, why did we get here? It's really bare bones stuff. It's like a business. We had expectations for this profit margin. We're not remotely hitting it. What happened? You got to check every detail, because the players were as far away from being ready for that game as possible. That does not fit Penn State. You can bemoan his record in big games all you want, and it's legitimate. One thing they don't do is lose to teams like this. They just don't. And they looked completely apathetic, like they had no interest in the game of football. They still do. At least Franklin does. Yeah, like I saw some video of him right after the game. It looked like he had been stunned. Like I'm not trying to pick on anybody in this situation because I've been there too. Like he'd just been in a car crash. Like he was in a daze. He didn't look like it was a surreal moment. It looked like it was beyond that. So I don't know what Mr. Kraft or anybody else can tell him or get from him right after, but I imagine late Sunday into Monday, there had to be some kind of conversations. And to be honest, if you're Franklin, he's got to ask his staff, okay, did anybody see this coming? They got to have that conversation as a staff before he can really tell Kraft. You got to know all the answers on that. Whether or not they're truthful is important, and I don't know those guys, but that's a pretty high-paid staff. I would imagine somebody saw something. Correct me if I'm wrong. James had a comment that they didn't take the loss to Oregon well. So it had to have been at least on his mind, because that is a telltale sign that practice is going to be quote-unquote iffy. And then you get some later in the week, you're like, oh boy, I like the game plan, but are they going to execute it? At some point it's on the players to get out of the fog. That makes me question the leadership. And it makes me question whether they realize that, hey, football is an every game situation. You don't just show up. It's all the way through the week. And you got a veteran team. You got a veteran coaching staff. Mm-hmm. None of it makes sense mathematically or logically. So there's a lot of questions he probably had to ask first before he even got to Kraft. And I doubt Kraft liked any of his answers anyway, because he's going to take crap because, I don't know how many people know this, but the press conference that James Franklin's getting fired ain't coming. He's owed $50 million or something like that. I just don't see it. This is not Texas A&M where there's oil money sprouting out of the ground everywhere. They're not going to look to be that way. They're probably going to be more judicious, I would imagine, unless he moves on his own accord, which is possible. I don't think James Franklin's going anywhere.
That's a perfect segue to discuss all of that, because fans they're angry. The people that have been calling for this move for a long time are like, yep, now it's due. It's going to happen. And now the people that are joining that crowd are saying, okay, when's it going to happen? There is a strong chance that none of this happens, because Penn State is in a tough spot to make this kind of decision. We're going to talk about it next here on this Locked On Crossover. And this episode is brought to you by PrizePicks. Every day we make decisions, but on PrizePicks, being right can actually get you paid. Don't miss the excitement of this football season with PrizePicks, where it's good to be right. Playing PrizePicks is such a fun, simple way to add more excitement to football. You just pick more or less on player projections like Josh Allen's passing yards or Saquon Barkley rushing for a touchdown, and you're in the game. It's quick. You can make your lineup in under a minute. One of the best parts, PrizePicks just added stacks. So if you want to ride with a player, you can select their passing yards, rushing yards, touchdowns, all in one lineup. It's also fun to follow other players in the app and copy their lineups with just one click. And the new injury reboot feature, if your player leaves early and doesn't return, it won't count against you. Download the PrizePicks app today and use code LOCKEDONCollege to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. That is code LOCKEDONCollege for $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. PrizePicks, it's good to be right. It's the buyout. Simply put, James Franklin, Brian, again, if you listen to some of these press conferences, Franklin makes it very apparent that he's had tons of success over the decade and how he's revitalized the program and other programs would be envious of where they are. Fine, that may be true, but I am also now going to side on the fact that you're only as good as your last game. What you did in 2017 and 2018 do not compare anymore when you called this the best roster, the best personnel that had ever been assembled in your tenure. So they are well short of expectations. Now, I say the season's over because Ohio State and Indiana, I think those teams are just flat out better, and I don't really give Penn State a fighting chance. If somehow they're able to, reset themselves, the bye week or whatever, they get a couple of wins, the season's still alive. In theory, you can go 10-2, win those two games, and I think the committee would be like, you know what, the resume is good enough. Okay, we'll let you in as an at-large. But we're talking about the potential if and when that doesn't happen, Franklin's not going to be, it's not as simple as, yep, he's fired today because of that $56 million buyout that you alluded to in the first segment.
Yeah, at the end of the day, but it's a famous saying, and it's kind of a shot at Penn State in this situation. It's not meant to be. It's not who you fire, it's who you hire. And in this case, who's paying for all this? I mean, that's another famous line, because if you fire him, you just hired Knowles. Do you think Knowles is going to walk without getting paid? Do you think the offense coordinator, you know what I mean? Like they would owe something like $70 million or more just to get the guys gone.
Yeah.
That's not realistic.
It's the staff and the guarantees for the staff as well.
That's how, for those who don't know, these contracts, that's guaranteed cash, brother. How it's paid out can be different per contract.
Yeah.
Some of it's up front within 90 days, blah, blah, blah. Then the payments over 5 years, blah, blah, blah. They don't want to pay any of it. But they didn't think they were going to have this conversation either. So, yeah, I don't see it. And to be honest, unless James just wants to go to the NFL and be a coordinator or something like that, kind of do what Gus Malzahn did when he left UCF to go to Florida State or something, I think he's going to be the coach at Penn State for the foreseeable future, the next 2-3 years at least.
Why would he want to leave? Why would Franklin want to leave? Because I will give him credit for people may say that, oh, he's holding Penn State hostage in a sense. I will frame it this way, though. He did himself a lot of favors and his agent to get him that much stability. Sure. Now, he may be in control of the situation, And you're probably not going to give a lot of props to the former athletic director and Sandy Barber for allowing those, because that happened pre-Pat Kraft. This is not Pat Kraft's responsibility. He's dealing with the consequences of it since it's gone this way. But Franklin has created so many guarantees for himself that Penn State is now stuck with him one way or another. If he does not want to leave, if he doesn't want to agree to a mediated buyout somewhere in the middle, or say, hey, I'll go find another job and you can pay me half or whatever, why would Franklin even want to sacrifice half? Why would he say, you know what, I'll take $28 million and I'll be on my way? Why would he want to do that?
He's not. And his agent would tell him to pound sand anyway, because he's getting part of this too. That's just not how it works.
Yeah.
He's got to want to leave on his own accord, and that's always possible.
And what job would open up for Franklin that is better for him? The ones that come to mind that are kind of those niche jobs where I think Franklin would actually succeed, because you can't just drop him in any program and say, yeah, he'll turn it around, or he'll keep the standard like Alabama, Georgia. I don't think he would succeed there. But University of Florida, I think he'd do better than Billy Napier, and that's still a Power 4 SEC job. USC. If Lincoln Riley, for whatever, were to split from USC, that's a job that I've always heard that people have heard Franklin linked to. LSU, for whatever reason, if they and Brian Kelly parted ways, why would Franklin want to take a step back from a job where he has no security, no stability, like a Virginia Tech? You mean to tell me he's going to settle when he's just spent 12 years at Penn State?
Yeah, you hit it right. I think LSU's the dark horse there, because they expect to win 10 games this year, and they ain't winning 10 games.
I don't know if they like Brian Kelly. I don't know if anybody who employs Brian Kelly likes Brian Kelly.
The answer to that is no. But the point is still the same. I can tell you that from fans from multiple places. But the point is still the same. They're not going to achieve that. Could be an opening, and that's as easy a job for recruiting as there is in the country. Yeah. I can assure you, to somebody that covers it. Franklin would kill it there in that regard.
I think he would, yeah. At any of those schools that I named.
Yeah.
But those are the only three. Virginia Tech's a perfect setup for him. Virginia Tech is kind of a soft landing, I suppose, to...
You can go 8-4 and make them happy.
Yeah.
You can, if you go to a bowl game at this point, after what they're going through, the crap now, they'd be happy. But would James be happy with that?
Would he want to go to the ACC? Would he want to take a massive pay cut like that and a massive resource cut? Why would Franklin want to leave Penn State?
Yeah, I don't think he would. So for all those reasons, we're going to be talking this next summer about Penn State's preseason camp with James Franklin running the program. Go ahead and call that right now.
Okay.
If it doesn't happen, I will be shocked. The only way it doesn't, he wants to leave, and there's if the LSU job comes open, nobody
Exactly.
I mean, even if you're a Penn State fan, that's a pretty easy gig. You can recruit 80% of your roster within a 300-mile radius of where you are and have a top 5 roster. It's insane. So that aside, there aren't many jobs like it. But is he guaranteed to get the job? No. I don't know who they would hire, by the way. But still, that's the point. You have to find that perfect job for him to leave Penn State. It's a top 15 job in college football by any metric. Mm-hmm. And he's got 50-some million he's got him on the hook for. He ain't going nowhere.
So let's talk about it from Penn State's perspective to wrap up this segment before we talk about the recruiting implications one way or another. Penn State, say they were to crowdfund and when I say crowdfund, I mean from the donors, because it's not going to be up to the fans. The fans can voice their displeasure. They can stop going to the games. They can stop buying merchandise. They can boo for the people that do show up. I think Northwestern's going to be very well underattended, to say the least. But you're still going to get 80, 90,000 people because it's a Penn State game and you got to take the family and all that stuff. So be it. But Penn State, I've heard passively, hey, there are donors that are extremely upset and they do want to go in a different direction. So what needs to happen for Penn State to really, if they had to push this over the finish line to say, you know what, we're done. Franklin says he wants to stay, but we're going to go in a different direction. Even if the odds are slim to none in your mind, what do you see needing to happen to actually have that kind of timeline occur?
Well, it's 3 things. Number one, they've got not just the boosters, but at least some of the administration, president, BOT, some of those people got to be in agreement. Okay. Number 2, let's get to Franklin last, but who in the hell are you hiring?
I mean, a lot of people on the Penn State side, at least people that are vocal, whether that's, any media members, including, podcast hosts or people that cover the team, fans, already have coaching big boards put together. Let's go get Curt Cignetti. Let's go get John Summerall. Let's go get Kenny Dillingham. So people seem to believe for the most part that Penn State will be just fine if James Franklin moves on.
That's easier said than done. Everybody thought that Billy Napier was the savior of Florida too. How's that working out?
But then you look at Curt Cignetti. I'm just playing devil's advocate. I agree with you, Brian, but I'm just saying, hey, look at Curt Cignetti in Indiana. What a turnaround.
It's like 1 in 5 at best for those kinds of circumstances. And
I agree. The odds are not likely that happens, but yeah, it's because look at Lincoln Riley in USC. It's been an uphill battle.
He's the most overrated coach in college football. It's hard to find guys that are A, fits, B, not overspend on their contract. If you think James Franklin's bad, Lincoln Riley's was well over $100 million. He ain't going nowhere either.
Yeah, that's true.
So that's not good for them, but USC made that mistake. The point is still the same. You got to be careful. Like Will Stein, look, he's a dude. When was the last time? When was the last time he was a head coach in college football? Never has been. How many guys do you know are going to come coach under him? He doesn't even know that.
Yeah.
And you got to go to Penn State and they expect you to win minimum 10 games a year. That is a tough ask for a first-time head coach, bro. There aren't many that do well with that.
Especially when you're not a Pennsylvania or a Penn State guy.
That's what I mean.
He has no connections.
Yeah, if he was from South Jersey, sure. I would be more apt to, is he from the D.C. area, went to good counsel or something? Okay. He's not. So all those kinds of things got to be taken in. It's difficult. And finally, it's just, there's no nice way to say that. The school's not going to want to pay a dime for this. Is what will make people mad. They're going to expect boosters to do it.
Yeah.
That's going to go over like a lead balloon.
With the stadium renovations and all the requests for additional NIL, it's the resource. The well is fairly dry at this point. Let's say that.
That's why Florida State still has Norvell. It's one of the reasons Napier is still in Gainesville. It's one of the reasons the state of Louisiana is broke as a joke. It's one of the reasons Kelly is at LSU, maybe at LSU even after this year, even if they win 8 or 9. Money in college football, because of NIL and stuff, teams invest more in players now than they do coaches. So there is a theory backtracking on that. If they change, they might go lower, go with a young guy, like age-wise, like a Kenny Dillingham, Stein, somebody like that, because they can pay him $5 million instead of 10. It's something. And you could get the fan base at least off your back for a few years until they either figure it out or they flame out. But that booster check or combination of, it's got to be 45, 50 million of the 56 that he's owed. Good luck. They're not going to want to pay for it. Nobody wants to be associated with helping James Franklin if you're a Penn State fan. They don't. Do you think they could even get half the money from the boosters legitimately?
With everything else that is being billed right now, I don't have the same expectation that they could. If there was no stadium renovation project, I'd say, you know what? Yeah. But since they're getting gifts of $25 million as it is, not every donation or donor class, family, individual, business can afford to say, we'll hand you over another $25 million. They're already spread kind of thin.
That's where I'm at. So, and I don't blame those people. You want return on your investment. Some of these people are like, I've been giving for years and we just lost to 0-4 UCLA. Why are you calling me right now? I mean, I would not be one of the individuals making the start to that phone conversation. Holy moly, I'd want no part of that. I'm sure there'll be a few friendly words, if you know what I mean, thrown back at them if they have to do that. But that's where Penn State's at. So again, barring something unforeseen, Mr. Franklin will be back in Happy Valley next year.
Okay, so the recruiting implications of it, because aside from the donors, disgruntled fans that are questioning James Franklin and some people that want him gone, everybody else that has played for Franklin or works alongside him for the most part, they really like him. These recruiting classes, they will go to bat for James Franklin. So recruiting implications, well, if James Franklin stays, I don't think, at least the positive side is, I don't know that all that much changes. We're going to talk about it next here on this Locked On Crossover. And this episode is brought to you by Game Time. College football is back, and we all couldn't be more excited. It's the tailgates, the rivalries, the energy in the stands. There's just nothing like it. But let's be real, actually getting tickets can feel more like a battle than the game itself. Endless queues, hidden fees, prices jumping at checkout. That's why I use Game Time, the app that gives the advantage back to the fans. It's the easiest way to score last-minute tickets at the best prices with no surprise fees. What you see is what you pay. You can pull up Game Time, and in just a couple taps, you'll see amazing deals. I'm talking about your favorite college football games for as low as $25. And one of the best features about Game Time, if you've never used it, is the point of view feature, where if you've never been to a stadium, you've never been to a venue, a ballpark, for a concert, or a sporting event, you can see your point of view ahead of time, so there's no second guessing, there's no wondering. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, that is promo code LOCKEDONCOLLEGE for $20 off. Swipe, tap, ticket, go. Download Game Time today. This episode is brought to you by Square, your favorite neighborhood spots run on Square. There are certain businesses that make the neighborhood the neighborhood. These are places that become an extension of home. Whether it's a sports bar dedicated to your team's fan base, the spot with the best wings in town for game day, or that beloved local chain that's been rooted in your community for years, these businesses are what bring people together. When the neighborhood businesses thrive, the whole neighborhood thrives. Take Cafe Lamont near State College as an example. When we show up as a community, it means big business for local business owners. Money spent in the neighborhood stays in the neighborhood. Take this as an excuse to go support your favorite local spots and have yourself a day in the neighborhood. Square is a proud partner of more than 4 million neighborhood businesses around the world. You can go to square.com/go/lockedoncollege to learn more, but before you do, go support your favorite neighborhood spot. You'll be happy you did. Square, see you in the neighborhood. Okay, recruiting implications, we're going to go with the timeline where Franklin is still employed, and we think that's the likely result, versus if it doesn't matter who the coach is, just what that would look like for Penn State in a post-Franklin era immediately. So for James Franklin staying, I got to imagine everything stays status quo. I think the NIL conversations get a little more difficult, but Penn State, made that agreement with Adidas. You still have the money that you were able to fund earlier with the class of 2025, the class of 2026 and 2027, right? So Penn State's recruiting classes, I think if Franklin still is employed and is still the head coach of the Nittany Lions going into year 13, the 2026 class will remain intact. The 2027 class is already off to a phenomenal start. Those guys aren't going to decommit unless they're concerned that Franklin's not going to be there. They're committed to him. They're not committed to Penn State. They're committed to Franklin. So they're all going to stay. So at least and I think that's what James Franklin is also using as leverage. Like, hey, if you fire me, you're going to lose a top 10 running back a top 10 player in the country. Other top 50 prospects. We were just getting started. Why are you trying to push me out now?
100%. What do I always say on your show, Zach? Do recruits pick schools or do they pick coaches?
They pick coaches.
I know, especially old school people hate that, but it's just truth. And Franklin, for whatever you want to say his flaws are, recruiting is not on the list. Their ability to evaluate players that fit the program. And he had a great comment. I don't know if it was ESPN, who it was. He did a video with talking about little things that he looks for in character and different things on whether you would fit into. Like, it was sharp. He gets it. And it's why their culture is so good.
That's why prospects and the families love him. They do.
Yep. You send your kid there, you're not going to send them with a bunch of morons. Like, you're always going to have some bad apples on every team. It's going to happen.
Yeah.
But you're going to send your kid, for the most part, around some pretty good players, pretty good people. It keeps kids around. Their transfer situation's not as bad as other programs. All those things are true. And by and large, he's a pretty good coach, but everybody's going to be mad until they beat Ohio State and Michigan. We all know that. Is he better than Ryan Day? No, he's not. Doesn't mean you can't beat them in a game, though. And that's something he needs. If he just beat them once in the last 5 years, he'd probably be off that schneid.
Yeah.
But they come close, and then they just don't get over the top. They lose by like 10, 6-10, and they have a couple of key plays.
3 point, 1 point, 4 points.
Yeah, it's been tough.
Yeah.
So the point is still the same. Those players are coming to play for James, and to a certain degree, some of the assistants too.
Yes.
But they're attached to James for the most part. Not all. Like, obviously, a certain defensive coordinator that is hired can probably pick up the phone and go a lot of places. But to that point, for the most part, these assistants have stuck around for him. It'll be interesting if he did leave, where he would go and who would go with him. Again, there are a lot of things that go with this. The recruits is just part of it, but that staff's going to implode. You're talking about complete overhaul. You would lose a lot of guys off your roster.
Yeah.
And I mean, not like 5. I mean, it'd be 10 plus. Next year, you might look at a 6-6 Penn State team. I don't think Penn State fans are ready for that. Matter of fact, I know they're not.
It depends. It depends because one of the things that I pointed out, this conversation was a lot different before 2021 because of NIL and the transfer portal. You needed in college football, you needed a 5-year plan. You had to give a college football coach at least at a minimum, if you wanted him to succeed, give him 4 years, 5, maybe even 6 to build the foundation, because Franklin did have a fairly quick turnaround. Despite the sanctions and everything else, from 2014 to winning a Big Ten championship in 2016. But again, that doesn't carry as much weight anymore when you're losing to UCLA. It's not just losing to Oregon. It's not just losing to Ohio State and Michigan anymore. It's losing to UCLA. Okay, so you're not even potentially going 10-2. It's still possible, but you better win out. So that aside, Let's talk about the alternative where Penn State, James Franklin does move on, whether he's fired or they agree to a buyout and he accepts another job or goes into retirement. I don't know what he's thinking. Maybe he's just done with college football. You're right. If they went to go and get an outside hire, I've thought about Terry Smith. He's been the associate head coach for so long. He would probably apply for the job. I don't think he'd get it, but he would definitely be a strong candidate to at least put his name on the list and, have a good interview. The staff would completely turn over, assistants, analysts, and everything alike. He was getting some Penn State players to be on staff, but most of those other people are outside of Penn State. Anyway, what that would look like, we talked about how the seniors are all going to move on. This team is going to have so much turnover as it is, but to say, hey, those up-and-coming rising players, especially if Franklin were to land in another place like a Florida or an LSU, what's stopping them from transferring there? I think of Darius Dixon. I think of any of those, Quentin Martin, Corey Smith, Ethan Grunkemeyer, that next group of starters that are probably they're going to follow him because they were committed to him. But with that being said, the new coach that would come in with an ample amount of time would just bring his previous team over if they were a head coach. Will Stein, I don't think tons of Oregon players are going to follow him to Penn State in theory. Kenny Dillingham, depending on how many of them are from Arizona or from that part of the country, you could see Kenny Dillingham bringing over a lot of the bulk of his roster, the core of his roster. If it's a coordinator, I don't know how much success that is. So that's where 6-6 or maybe even worse are on the table. If it's a Kenny Dillingham, you're probably going 9-3 in that first season because of the portal.
Yeah, Kenny knows how to hit the portal. Good luck getting him, but you got to make that phone call.
Yeah, that's a major assumption. Yeah,
because he's an ASU alum for those who don't know, and he loves
yes,
that
he
place.
is.
But you got to make the phone call anyway. There's so many what ifs. You got to worry about your own roster. Got to worry about the kids committed in 26, Keemon Spell in 27, et cetera, et cetera. If you lose Franklin, you're playing Russian roulette. Sure, you want to go up, but there's also a chance, at least for the next couple of years, you could be 8-4. It's possible because the roster is so funky. It's even if Stein or somebody like that comes, it's not a guarantee. Yeah. It's a lot of upheaval, man. And the one thing about Franklin, it's kind of an old school coach. Their systems don't change that much. They lose a good player, they insert somebody, but he's been in the system. He's repped it a bazillion times. It's not a big drop-off. You're starting fresh. Mm-hmm. So be careful for what you wish.
Oh, yeah, all those recruiting classes would be gone because they're all Franklin players. Again, they're not committed to Penn State University. You might get a player or two that is local to, yes, Pennsylvania, New Jersey. You might still be able to get players that want to stay close to home. But it's just this age of college football where it's not regional anymore. Anybody can go play anywhere. We're seeing people go all the way from New Jersey, for example, Luke Wafel, to go play at USC. Location doesn't really matter as much anymore. So to say, oh, well, Penn State's still the state school. The people that are born and raised here will still want to stay, especially if you get an outside coach that's not a Penn State guy, probably not.
You said it. That's what I mean. Like, loyalty is a funny thing in how it works with recruiting and roster management today. And I'm just looking at that perspective. I mean, you talk about game day coaching. We can all argue about who Penn State should hire. And that's probably one of the 10 best jobs in college football, in my opinion. But it's got to be the right fit. Does your family want to live at the bottom of a mountain, in a small town? Like, there's a million things that go into that.
Yeah.
Hiring a coach, man, is hard. Even Penn State, it is hard. So it'll be fascinating if it happens. I guarantee I'll cover it like crazy on the portal if it does. It'll be a lot of fun.
I will on my show as well.
That's right. Absolutely.
So, but we're expecting things to stay status quo because Penn State's not in a position, because it's difficult to buy out Franklin. It's also difficult to make the right decision in Asher coaching hire, but there's still a portion of people that it's Penn State. So Penn State will succeed and do more. It's not as easy as it sounds. I'm just saying, so be prepared for, but that's the idea. It's like, oh, can Penn State do better than Franklin? To be determined. And that's where we can have plenty of debates about this, because this isn't going anywhere, especially if Penn State does not circle the wagons and finish 10-2. My name is Zach Seyko. I'm the host of Locked On Nittany Lions. He is Brian Smith, the host of The Portal, and Locked On Seminoles, does so much comprehensive college football coverage. Thank you so much for joining us on this crossover episode. Let us know your thoughts down in the comments section about all of it. Coaching changes, where Penn State would be, what the situation with James Franklin. We want to know your thoughts as well. Brian, this isn't the last time we're going to talk about this specifically, because it's going to follow Penn State for the rest of the season, especially if they lose some of those tougher games. So thank you for the time as always, and can't wait for the next conversation.
Absolutely.